Hey, Puntistas, welcome back. Got a little bit more information for you regarding how to build your body paragraphs for your research argument essay. Now, today I'll be talking about summarizing and paraphrasing and how that's different from direct quotation when you are incorporating outside information into any kind of piece of writing that you're doing in college. So, let's go ahead and start. Where are you, dude? Okay. So I got a couple definitions here just so that we can get things straight. First is that summarizing is when you take an original text and you put it into your own words and then you shrink it down. You distill it or you condense it. So maybe you've got like a paragraph in that original text and you just kind of get it down to its most important core ideas, maybe down to a sentence or two. Now, paraphrasing is similar, but it's got one big difference, and that is it's a full-length version of that original text in your own words. So in other words, if you're dealing with a paragraph and you put it in your own words and it's about the same size as that original paragraph, it's a paraphrase. I'm not saying you should paraphrase a whole paragraph. That sounds like a lot of needless work. You should probably find ways to condense and to summarize. Now, sometimes people get these two terms, whoa, going too far ahead. Sometimes people get these two terms confused or mixed up a little bit, and it's really important to know the difference, and I think that's more important than keeping them straight. But this is how I remember paraphrasing. When you're doing paraphrasing, you're pairing up the original text with your own words, phrase by phrase. You're pairing up phrases. Yeah, see what I did there? I'm not gonna lie, that's super cheesy. But it will probably stick. The more embarrassing and cheesy a certain memory device is, the more likely you're going to remember it because our cringe memories are very, very strong. Uh, that's a whole different video. Finally, when we're looking at direct quotation, that's an exact version of that original text and you put it inside quotation marks. Um, and this, when people first start incorporating outside work, outside research into their own writing, they usually do direct quotation because it's the most obvious. Okay, somebody says this, quote, here's the stuff. But all of these count as using outside sources. Now, if you watched the Avoiding Dropped Quotations video already, you will know that all three of these need a signal phrase, but especially the direct quotation one. So, sometimes you do want to summarize and paraphrase, and I'm going to get into how you decide between doing summarizing and paraphrasing on one side and direct quotation on the other in the slide after this. But summarizing and paraphrasing is an important skill to practice and kind of have a good handle on for your writing in college. And using synonyms is really important. Go up to your spice rack, pull down a word that means the same thing as another word. That helps to summarize or paraphrase. You can also vary sentence structure. You can switch order of ideas as long as you are not messing with original meaning. You can make short sentences out of long sentences. And vice versa, make long sentences out of short sentences. All of this helps you put something into your own words. Now, sometimes this is going to feel challenging because when you look at something that you're reading, you think, oh man, they nailed it. It's phrased so perfectly. There's no way I could do anywhere near as well as this. Well, it takes practice. But it's going to be really important for us to know when we need to do that summarizing, paraphrasing, and when we need to use direct quotation. So I've got two little columns here. I suggest you put these into your notes. On that summarizing and paraphrasing side, these techniques are really good for when you're using transparent language. That doesn't mean you're printing in invisible ink. What that means is Um, you are using language whose primary goal is clarity. It's just trying to get the information across. If you read journals or academic articles or research, um, that language is just trying to get you that information as clearly as possible. So, scientific data, social science data, statistics, they're not going to have a lot of style. They might feel dry to you, right? But what they're just trying to do is get you to those biggest, most important points. And for summarizing, I'm paraphrasing a signal phrase, and remember we talked about that in the drop quotation video. It's not required, but it is recommended. And honestly, I don't think you're ever in the wrong for putting it in there. And I'd rather have you be safe than sorry. Way later down in your writing experiences and writing tasks, feel free to mess with that. But for right now, I'd rather just you make sure that you are not accidentally plagiarizing, right? And signal phrases are super crucial for avoiding that. Oh, excuse me. I just had some sriracha, so I'm kind of burning right now. But it wakes me up. And remember that signal phrase has three parts: the author's name, a claim of authority, and finally some version of says, writes, or thinks. If you haven't watched that video on this week's learning materials, check out the drop quotation video. Really important. Finally, it does require that parenthetical citation at the end of the referenced information. Parenthetical is just the adjective form of parentheses. So the parentheses citation, so it would be parentheses, last name, just the number of the page, parentheses, period. Now, if you're having trouble knowing how to incorporate all that material, keep in mind that there are lots of excellent resources at OWL, at Purdue. OWL, remember, stands for Online Writing Lab. And go to the MLA section, citing sources. On that direct quotation side, you really want to use direct quotation when there is something amazing and out of ordinary about the language being used. In other words, it's, like I said, powerful or beautiful or so tight or forceful that you're going to lose something really important, maybe even crucial or essential, by putting it in your own words. Now, this kind of language you're usually not going to see when something you're reading is talking about scientific data or social science data or statistics. So notice we're talking about the Department of Motor Vehicles over here. You can probably tell this is going to be very transparent, practical language, not a lot of style or personality. And perhaps, this one is in relationship to writing an essay about texting while driving. Let's look at a direct quotation example. Well, first of all, it does require that signal phrase. I mean, you don't want to just slam down a quotation in there. Give that name, that claim to authority, that is some reason why other people should believe that name, and that version of says, writes, or thinks. And it also still does require that parenthetical or parentheses citation at the end of the referenced information. Now, let's get some examples. Here's an example of something that you could easily paraphrase or summarize. The Department of Motor Vehicles? The Department of Motor Vehicles has found that 30% of all teenage collisions involve texting. There's nothing beautiful or powerful or really amazing about that language. It's just trying to very practically deliver that information to you. Now, what we would do is find a synonym for 30%, a synonym for teenage, a synonym for collisions, and maybe a synonym for texting. Go ahead and pause the video and think about how you could find other words that get the same point across. Pause the video now. Write in your notes. I was looking like I was frozen there for a second. But let's talk about some of those synonyms. Instead of 30%, you could say 3 out of 10. You could say almost 1/3. You could say, I think those are probably the best two. 30 out of 100 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Reduce that fraction. Instead of teenage, you could use adolescent, right? Young adult may be appropriate. I think adolescent is probably better. Instead of collisions, you might use the word crashes or accidents. Instead of texting, you might say text messaging, SMS messaging, something along those lines. And again, it will get easier with practice. Now let's look at that direct quotation example. Again, we're talking about texting and driving. And let's look at this quotation. Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood argues, texting and driving is America's #1 teen killer. Now notice that language isn't practical or transparent. It's saying something in kind of a unique and powerful and stylistic way. So if you just put in there, texting and driving kills more teenagers than anybody else, you're losing some of the power of that creative phrasing. So this second one is a really, really strong candidate for using direct quotation. You can kind of feel like the oomph in it. It's very quotable. Now, this is something that'll take practice for you to look at. If you are building your essay, which remember is due Saturday, that's the rough draft, put it all in as direct quotation as first. That way you've got a placeholder. Going back and looking through that revision, through that rough draft before you get done with it, before you submit it on Saturday, you can basically ask yourself, wow, is there something super special about this language? Like here, super powerful, innovative, creative, sassy. If so, keep it in the quotation. If it's lacking that kind of power and originality and innovativeness, or innovation rather, go ahead and use summary or paraphrase. Once again, nice little method to help you incorporate those outside sources into your body paragraphs using that TRIAC or that DIA method. Thanks a lot for watching. If you got any questions, shoot me an email or shoot me a text.